Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Matt Taglia, Senior Director of Emerson College Polling. Matt, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
President Trump has officially made it to his first 100 days in office. And this milestone really feels like a good time to give the country a pulse check, see how they think that the president's doing, what they feel so far about Trump 2.0. So to start off the conversation, what's President Trump's job approval rating now as we sit here after the first 100 days?
Yeah, Brittany. So after the first 100 days, the country is split. So 45% approve of Donald Trump's job performance as president, 45% disapprove, and then we've got 10% who are neutral, have no opinion. Now that's down from 47% approval since March during our 50-day poll, and a bit of a steady slide since inauguration. We had him up quite a bit in January, and so now he's sitting at near even numbers. So, I don't think that this is necessarily bad news for President Trump. I know that it's a little bit higher than some of the other polls that have come out for the 100 days, but it is not the positive trajectory that the president might want to see.
Yeah, you definitely in the last 3 months, you don't want to see a trend line going down over your approval. But what do the numbers look like when you break it down by demo?
Yeah, and I think we see it's very much partisan. So Democrats overwhelmingly disapprove of the president's job performance. Republicans overwhelmingly approve. But when you look at independents, 36% approve and 44% disapprove. I think that that is a bit telling. I know that they do form a little bit smaller core of the electorate than the highly partisan voters. But for those middle of the road voters out there, they don't necessarily like what they're seeing from President Trump.
I know that we are in a really interesting spot right now because it's Trump 2.0, like we've been saying, but we had this 4-year break, a 4-year Biden break between President Trump's first term and now. So people have gotten a taste of President Trump for 4 years before. Do people think that he's doing a better than expected or worse than expected job this time around?
Yeah, and a plurality of folks say that Trump is doing a worse than expected job. So 43% say that he's doing worse than they expected. That's an increase of 7 points since our March 50-day poll. So, I think that it's clear, that trajectory is definitely coming down. I think once you look at some of the policy positions of Trump and the Trump administration, you can see why that may be the case, especially when you look at the economy and tariffs in particular.
Let's dive right into those issues. And I want to start with the economy because you and I talked about polling leading up to the 2024 election, and the economy was the top issue. And the election, in a large part, boiled down to more voters thinking that President Trump would be better at handling the economy than Vice President Kamala Harris. Do voters think that he's doing a good job when it comes to the economy?
And the shorter answer to that is no. Just 37% approve of President Trump's job performance when it comes to the economy. 49% disapprove. You look a little bit further, and 44% say that they are worse off now financially than they were a year ago. That includes 21% of Republicans. 49% also say that Trump is making the economy worse with his policies. Just 29% say that he's making it better. All of these taken together, it's a bit of a dismal picture for Trump. It's definitely not, I think, what a lot of his voters expected when he was coming off of the campaign trail, and some of the things that he said about the economy. That is just not panning out, and we can see that reflected in this poll.
What about tariffs specifically? Because economists have said tariffs are eventually going to hike up prices and shrink disposable income, and people are already nervous about the economy. President Trump, in the past couple of months, has threatened, started, paused, and escalated global trade wars that have roiled the markets. Are voters pro-tariff?
They are not. 34% approve of Trump's position on tariffs, 51% disapprove. A similar numbers say that tariffs are making the economy worse. We've seen this reflected in some of our earlier polls as well. By and large, voters do not believe that tariffs help the economy. I think we're seeing some pretty stark evidence of that in this poll. I think we're seeing some of that confidence in the market as well. So, again, the economy, tariffs, these two things go hand in hand, especially with voters. I think they're really starting to see some of the evidence of the effects of the tariffs personally, and that's informing their answers here.
What about immigration? Because that was another top issue in the 2024 election. And on day one of President Trump's second term, he signed a slew of border security and immigration executive orders. He also has had immigration be a pillar in this second term. His deportation policies have been largely controversial. What do voters think about his stance, his policies, his action on immigration so far?
Yeah, and this is where you start to see a little bit of the positive news for the Trump administration. Overall, voters do approve of President Trump's handling of immigration. We see that older voters are more supportive of deportation. It flips slightly, but really voters are split. Again, older voters being more supportive of how the Trump administration has handled deportations. So, yeah, this is where the administration, the Trump presidency, is getting more positive marks in the eyes of voters. Uh, Despite some of the recent stories on deportation, especially, voters are not necessarily turned off by that.
Are there any other domestic issues that are either pain points or bright spots for President Trump?
Yeah, one of the biggest changes that we saw was with Russia and Ukraine. So when we asked about the handling of Russia and Ukraine, 27% approve of Trump's handling versus 52% who disapprove. Uh, that's a 10 drop in approval since the March poll. Really, really a staggering number there. Full 30% of Republicans disapprove of how President Trump is handling the war between Russia and Ukraine. So that I think is certainly informing some of the overall approval, some of these other numbers that we see here. On the more positive side, and it pains me to say this, but higher education, the way the Trump administration has been handling higher education, and not to take a position here, but working in higher ed, it's we've seen that the administration has taken some actions there, but overall, voters approve of that. 45% approve, 36% disapprove. And interestingly, we actually see higher approval among younger voters than among older voters. So there are some bright spots here for Trump and the administration, but I think overall picture is that a lot of these policies are really not popular, despite President Trump maintaining a reasonably high approval rating overall.
I think it would be really impossible to talk about President Trump's first few months in his second term without talking about Elon Musk's influence. As we know, Elon Musk is the world's richest man. He's still a special government employee. He's also the face of Doge. Do people and voters approve of him and his approach of essentially taking a chainsaw to the federal government?
Overall, no. And we have seen this as a trend really since Musk first took the position as head of Doge. I wouldn't necessarily say that voters disagree with the mission of Doge. We tend to see that folks want to see waste and fraud cut out of government, of course, but they don't necessarily agree with how it's going with Doge. Don't necessarily approve of Musk overall. So in this poll, 47% disapprove, 41% approve. That is very consistent with what we've seen since Musk started in the role, since the start of the administration. And as I think he looks to take a step back, I would expect that his public image will improve just by virtue of not helming the agency anymore.
Matt, as we know, hindsight really is always 2020, but does anyone have any buyer's remorse? Does any voter, knowing what they know now, would change their vote? If they were a Harris voter, vote Trump. If they were a Trump voter, vote Harris.
Yeah, and this is interesting. So we ask in all of our national polls, who you supported in the 2024 election. So based on that, we asked a question, knowing what you know now, would you change your vote? Would you vote for Harris if you're a Trump voter, or Trump if you were a Harris voter? And we found that by and large, neither would change their vote. So 93% of Harris supporters would still support Harris, and 94% of Trump voters would still support Trump. I think, we do see a little bit of bleed there in both, and those sort of go to the, I'd vote for another candidate, whether that's third party or some hypothetical candidate, or that they wouldn't vote at all. But overall, we are not seeing this buyer's remorse, as I think has been reported elsewhere. That is not reflected in this poll.
Matt, there are certainly a lot of good numbers in here to look out for. I'm looking out for the next over 1,000 days to see how people view President Trump all throughout that. And I know that Emerson College polling will have numbers about President Trump's approval and everything in between. Thank you so much for joining me. You are welcome back anytime.
Thanks so much. Hope to be back soon.